The longest government shutdown in American history has come to an end. Running from October 1st to November 12th, 2025, it lasted 43 days in total, and came about because Republicans didn't have enough votes in the Senate to unilaterally pass an appropriations bill, and they couldn't get enough Democrats to join them, at least not initially. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 of the Constitution reads, "No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law," which basically means the government can't spend money on anything without Congress passing a law authorizing it first. By the way, this is why legal scholars say that all those DOGE cuts were unconstitutional. It is not the domain of the executive branch to allocate funding. That power is held by Congress. And this is why there's still a ton of ongoing lawsuits opposing DOGE's various actions. But what this also means is that when it's time to pass the yearly budget, if the government can't come together and agree to pass something, when time's up, everything that needs to be renewed or refunded lapses. And all of those departments and agencies and whatever else, they all shut down until the next budget is passed. Any non-essential government employee is therefore without a job, at least until funds are appropriated for their work again. Essential government employees keep working, but often without getting paid. They receive back pay after the government reopens. To contrast, in parliamentary systems, that other common form of democracy that places like the UK and Canada and Australia live under, in these systems, failure to pass a budget doesn't actually lead to a government shutdown. Instead, the various government agencies continue on under the paradigm of the old budget. However, the Crown can and has intervened to call an off-year election if Parliament can't get its shit together and pass a budget, with all members of the House of Commons being required to defend their seats. The rationale for this is if the current government can't do the basic task of ruling the country, maybe some fresh faces are required in some of those seats. If this sounds familiar, it's because I explained all of this in my Justin Trudeau video. However, Americans are nothing if not stubborn. They're not going to implement a superior system meant to either force Congress to negotiate or force them to immediately defend their actions in an election where they might not be all that popular after their failure. No way, not if it comes from those pesky monarchies. That's anti-American. Therefore, government shutdowns continue to be a thing. Okay, I'll stop with the snarkiness, I'm just fucking around. Let's go over the timeline of the 2025 government shutdown. Back in March, a lapse of government funding was on the horizon. Democrats in the Senate announced they would agree to a continuing resolution to fund the government through September. A continuing resolution is basically an agreement to extend the current budget as is, in order to give the government more time to negotiate the next budget. The Democrats agreed to the continuing resolution because those DOGE lawsuits were only just getting started, and their complaints would be invalidated by a government shutdown. Basically, if the government shut down at that critical moment, it might have actually given DOGE's actions greater power. So the Democrats agreed to kick the can till September, when frankly, DOGE would just no longer be operational, and they would be in a greater position to fight its effects legally. By July of 2025, Trump signed into law the Big Beautiful Bill, which was the Republican Party's comprehensive tax and spend agenda, a cornerstone piece of legislation for Trump's second term. This bill did not refund the subsidies from the iconic 2010 piece of legislation, the Affordable Care Act, more commonly known as Obamacare. These Obamacare subsidies paid for the health insurance premiums of people who made less than 4 times the federal level of poverty. The American Rescue Plan Act in 2021 expanded access to these subsidies through 2022, and the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 extended this to 2025. The Big Beautiful Bill not only allowed the extended access to lapse, but it also made additional deep cuts to Medicaid. Now, the Big Beautiful Bill was not a budget. It contained a series of new laws that have to be enforced. It ordered the creation of new agencies and things like that. But actually funding all of this stuff, that required an additional appropriations bill. And the Republicans just didn't have enough seats to get an appropriations bill through the Senate. The Democrats said, okay, we won't fight you on the massively increased military spending. We won't fight you on the border wall funds. We won't fight you on the dismantling of environmental protections. We won't fight you on increasing the debt by $2 trillion more. But if you want Democrat votes to get this bill through the Senate, give us the healthcare stuff. The Republicans refused to compromise, so the Democrats voted no and the government shut down. Now, you'd think that Mr. Art of the Deal himself, Donald Trump, would understand the opportunity here. You're already getting the majority of your agenda. You need the Democrats to get the bill through, so cut a deal with them. Give them some healthcare, and you get your other shit in return. But no, it turns out that the extent of Trump's deal-making ability is to say, go fuck yourself, and refuse to meet with the other party. Politico claims they were informed by an anonymous White House official that Trump's plan was to extract maximum pain and to make the Democrats pay a huge price for not simply giving in to everything the Republicans want for nothing in return. The Republicans believed the Democrats would fold pretty quickly, which turned out not to be true, while Trump went on social media to make wild schizo claims that the compromise the Democrats asked for included, among other things, funding trans surgeries for minors, which by the way was not true. Anyway, the shutdown was on, Trump's third in total. really puts into perspective his earlier claim during Obama's shutdown that responsibility for these sort of things always fell to the leader.
My opinion, I hear the Democrats are going to be blamed and the Republicans are going to be blamed. I actually think the president would be blamed. If there is a shutdown, and it's not going to be a horrible shutdown because, as you know, things will sort of keep
Well, it's a partial shutdown, right?
If there is a shutdown, I think it would be a tremendously negative mark on the president of the United States. He's the one that has to get people together.
Yeah, but he's not saying that anymore. Starting on October 2nd, 1.5 million government employees were furloughed for the duration of the shutdown. The first half of October was marked with various failed negotiations. By October 25th, Trump publicly stated that an anonymous private donor would give the government $130 million to pay for the military. That person turned out to be Timothy Mellon, a longtime Republican donor. By October 27th, the Department of Agriculture announced there would be no SNAP benefits for the month of November due to the shutdown. By the way, SNAP is the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, otherwise known as food stamps. It's at this point that the internet memesters came out of the woodwork to joke on Twitter that the rioting in America is going to be extreme if the approximately 42 million people on food stamps promptly found themselves cut off. On October 29th, 24 states sued the Trump administration, trying to force it to fund SNAP through November. By October 31st, several judges ruled just that, and by November 7th, the Trump administration had appealed the ruling, hoping the court would allow the government to stop funding SNAP entirely. The Supreme Court agreed to a temporary stay, allowing the Trump administration to not fund SNAP until the lower courts ruled on the constitutionality of this whole shit show. Additionally, on the same day, November 7th, airlines began canceling flights in order to comply with FAA orders, as there was not enough air traffic controllers employed by the government anymore in order to actually do the job properly.
I don't really care what your political persuasion is, but you should really call your senator. Because I'll tell you, this is costing the airlines millions of dollars. And just think of 30 airplanes with one engine running. And it's going to take us at least 90 minutes to take off. Right now we're at a 4% reduction in flight capacity. Next week we go to 10. Last night I had a 6-hour delay in Houston. And the weather was perfect. It's because the air traffic controllers aren't getting paid.
By November 9th, an agreement was finally reached. The government was funded through January 30th, 2026, and a whole bunch of stuff was included in the package, most of it irrelevant to the shutdown itself. Pretty much all of the provisions of the Big Beautiful Bill were funded. SNAP was funded through September 2026, but most importantly, the Obamacare subsidies were not funded. Instead, Democrats received a promise that the Senate would independently vote to extend the Obamacare subsidies sometime in December. Now, if this sounds like Senate Democrats just got fucking swindled, I mean, yeah, kinda. There's no guarantee this December vote will actually pass or anything. Plus, whatever vote that is held in the Senate still has to pass the House, and the House Republicans aren't bound to uphold any deal cut in the Senate, which they're quite vocal about. That being said though, there are more concerns here than just trying to get the Obamacare credits extended. That is important, at least in my opinion, but other things are at play too. For example, it's no secret that the American public, whether correctly or incorrectly, holds the party in power responsible for whatever happens, even if it doesn't actually make sense per the procedure of the thing. The Republicans control the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and the presidency. The government shut down on their watch. The public overwhelmingly blames the Republicans for this event. As Trump himself said, it's the leader's responsibility when this sort of thing happens. And considering that November 4th's off-year elections happened during the shutdown, which I went over in my Mamdani video, and the Democrats absolutely and utterly destroyed the Republicans in those contests, far beyond what was even predicted, you might say that there was some political calculating going on here. Maybe the Senate Democrats knew that if they played hardball with the Republicans, knowing that Trump would never actually cut a deal with them, they could hurt the Republican image in the minds of voters during an essential round of elections. And that does seem to be what happened. As the shutdown raged on, locations that had these elections, like Virginia or New Jersey, experienced a massive blue shift. So you could make the argument this was all a ploy. In fact, multiple right-wing slop aggregator accounts did just that. And Wokeness, Libs of TikTok, and others posted various clips of Democratic lawmakers saying they used the shutdown as leverage. Oh my god, Gunther Eagleman is out here saying they hate Americans. You know what? In case you guys didn't know, this dude is a fucking shill account run from India. Remember when that undersea cable was accidentally cut and India was isolated from the rest of the internet for a couple days? During that event, this retard stopped posting. He's a fucking paid account. But anyway, the implication here is the Democrats don't actually care that poor Americans are starving without their SNAP funds, or whatever other damage the shutdown is causing. The Democrats are inflicting this damage on people by not simply signing into law everything the Republicans want, without even so much as trying to negotiate. There's no time to play politics with this. They're heartless! Of course, this is fucking retarded. Because guess what? This is how every minority party in this situation operates. If you are not actually the ruling coalition, but your support is required for the ruling coalition to be able to do anything, you are what is called a kingmaker. You're not the king, but you have just enough clout that the king can't ignore you. For example, in the past few Democratic primaries, Bernie Sanders was a kingmaker. He never actually had enough support to win the candidacy. No, not even in 2016, and it wasn't stolen from him either. But he did have enough clout behind him that each time, the frontrunner had to throw him a bone in order to get his support. This is normal politics. This is quite literally the actual art of the deal. This happens in other democracies too. In Canada, whenever there's a Liberal minority government, the NDP offers the Liberals their support in exchange for the Liberals passing some of their agenda as well. This is why so many Democrats, as well as those further to the left of the Dems, were extremely fucking angry at the end of the shutdown. They believe the Democrats ended the shutdown essentially for nothing, for a promise of a vote on Obamacare down the line that they'll probably lose anyway, and most certainly won't pass the House. However, this implication that the Democrats are playing politics with this, like that's somehow negative, is kinda ridiculous, considering that is actually just completely and totally normal. And, more importantly, that those people making this accusation also do this themselves all the fucking time. Do you guys recall President Trump's other government shutdowns? Let's go over them briefly. First, January 2018. The Trump administration had rescinded the DACA program back in September of 2017, and it was set to expire fully on March 2018. This shutdown unfolded in a pretty similar way to the 2025 one, including the Democrats backing down in exchange for vague promises. The Democrats refused to sign on to an appropriations bill until the Republicans promised a future debate on the DREAM Act to replace DACA. This shutdown only lasted 2 days. Secondly, and far more important, was the shutdown that ran from December 22, 2018 to January 25, 2019. Republicans controlled the Senate, while Democrats controlled the House. Throughout December 2018, the Senate negotiated and passed an appropriations bill with Trump's public approval. However, the bill didn't include funding for the southern border wall, and right-wing pundits, influencers, and journalists began to publicly blast Trump on TV and on social media for betraying his promise to build the wall. After receiving this blowback, Trump publicly announced he would veto any legislation that did not include wall funding, including the bill he had previously supported. Yeah, he vetoed his own fucking budget, and then blamed the Democrats for it. I don't know, is this the first time the president unilaterally calls a government shutdown? It might be. Either way, it's insane. Trump reaffirmed his commitment to vetoing any budget that didn't include wall money. This pissed off Congress so much, Democrat and Republican alike, that the next budget was passed with so many votes that it had a veto-proof majority. It was at this point that Trump declared a national emergency and used emergency powers to appropriate funding for the wall directly, which is fucking unhinged. The actual emergency here is that he pissed off Congress so much they rebelled against him, even his own party. During both of these shutdowns, Trump and the Republicans as a whole suffered in the polls, more so for the second one than the first, because it was such an obvious shitshow on the face of it. Now, this might be an interesting stroll down memory lane, and it does show that this rightoid hand-wringing about the Democrats using shutdowns as leverage is fucking stupid. Trump himself used it as leverage, you retards. But I think most importantly of all was the 2023 government shutdown attempt. Of course, there was no 2023 government shutdown, but Republicans tried to do it, and they tried to do it as leverage, and they fucking failed. This time around, we've got President Biden in office. Democrats control the Senate, Republicans control the House. It's during this Congress that the Freedom Caucus, an association of hard-right Trump loyalists within the Republican Party, began to hold a significant minority of the Republican share of the House seats. The Freedom Caucus, led by potential child rapist Matt Gaetz, began to oppose their own party's budget bills in the hopes of deliberately causing a government shutdown in order to hurt Joe Biden. Then Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy found himself at an impasse. The extremists within his own party were denouncing him as a Uniparty shill for daring to, do Congress's job and pass a fucking budget. While on the other side, the Democrats were more than willing to negotiate with them. They just wanted more of their agenda in it. This should not have fucking happened with the Republican majority in the House, but McCarthy had to go to the Democrats and give them additional concessions just to get the budget passed, because the Freedom Caucus demanded extreme budget cuts that were never going to get past the Senate, because they wanted a shutdown. Thanks to Democratic support, the budget was passed and the 2023 shutdown was avoided, but McCarthy paid the price. Gaetz called a vote on McCarthy's position as Speaker, hoping to oust him as a traitor. In the end, only 8 Republicans voted to give McCarthy the boot, despite the Freedom Caucus numbering over 40 members. But all the Democrats sided with Gaetz's motion, in order to highlight just how dysfunctional the Republican Party had become. As a result, McCarthy's career was basically destroyed. The point here is that Republicans have no place to do this kind of moralizing about weaponizing a government shutdown in order to get an agenda passed. These immoral fucks did it against their own party majority. I recall what the mood was like back on social media during this whole thing. And bro, your rank and file rightoids, your influencers and talking heads, they were all pro-Gates for being as anti-Biden as possible. And they were all anti-McCarthy, calling him a Uniparty sellout for basically just doing his fucking job. Though it was really funny trying to watch Marjorie Taylor Greene spin the whole shit show as a Democrat shutdown. What a fucking moron. The truth of it is, the parties are actually supposed to agree on things at least sometimes, you know? The various parties in a democratic system might have different views on policy, but they're all supposed to be loyal to the country they serve. That's why, once again in parliamentary systems, the second largest party is called His Majesty's Loyal Opposition. They oppose the current government, but they don't oppose the country, they are loyal to it. They all want the country to succeed, they just have different ideas on how to make that happen. The problem in the United States is that the right wing killed that ideal. Yes, the right wing killed it. Do you recall back when Obama was running against John McCain, and McCain had to make it clear to the dumb fuck boomers on the right that Obama was not actually fucking Satan incarnate? He was a good man that he simply had policy disagreements with, and they were both ultimately loyal citizens of America?
I gotta ask you a question. I do not I can't trust Obama. I have read about him, and he's an Arab. He is not, no?
No, ma'am. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues, and that's what this campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you.
If you go back and watch the debates between Bush versus Gore, Bush versus Kerry, Obama versus McCain, Obama versus Romney, the relationship between the two candidates is adversarial. They disagree on policy, sometimes quite strongly even, but it's very clear they don't view the other as a traitor. But when MAGA, when Trumpism, infected the Republicans from within, they killed that mutual respect. They called it the Uniparty. They said that Republicans who don't viscerally hate Democrats, and anybody else that disagreed with them, they were rhinos, Republicans in name only. Well, guess what? It turns out that the Uniparty, that's just America itself. The Uniparty is patriotism, and whatever replaced the rhinos is a force that acts in opposition to America itself. It is an anti-patriotic force, and it's not hard to see how. Going back to the Mamdani election real quick, you guys see this? Bill Ackman, the CEO of Pershing Square, was very anti-Mamdani during the election. He was slinging mud with the best of them, but he nonetheless said, "Congrats on the win. Now you have a big responsibility. If I can help New York City, let me know what I can do." And for this act of civilly congratulating his political opponent, he was excoriated by the right for being a traitor, a globalist elite member of the donor class who's betrayed the MAGA movement, a uniparty shill for daring to do what frankly should be done after every election. You come together and unite behind the winner.
At Zoran K. Mamdani, congrats on the win. Now you have a big responsibility. If I can help NYC, just let me know what I can do. You believe this? I mean, of course you do, because you know, but I hope voters now see the scam. The rest of the, the holdouts, maybe, what are you, 20% that aren't MAGA, see the scam. There it is. This is what Republican donors have been for decades. This is why your country has been crumbling before your eyes for decades, because your donors betray you, your senators betray you. They do this, and then they come to you every 2 years and every 4 years, and they plead for your vote. They pretend to be you. They pretend to share your values, and they do this to you behind your back. The second they can survive, the second they can look for crumbs. Look, people like Bill Ackman and the rest of the donor class, they're happy to sit on the floor licking the crumbs of the Democrats off the floor like a dog under the table, rather than get a seat at the table because they have to fight for it. That's who they are. And you know what? They're eating well.
If you actually care about democracy, about America, about New York, you should want Mamdani to be successful in his new job. You might believe that he's not going to be, for some very good reasons, in fact. I don't think he will be either. But you should want him to be nonetheless, because that means the people he's governing are prospering. If the other political party wins an election, you should actually want them to be successful in governing the country, because isn't that what the job of governing is all about? Isn't it not about naked, hypocritical partisanship and consolidating power for yourself and destroying everything else along the way? This is why I don't trust anybody who is stupid enough to rant about my Uniparty. These people actually do view America as their enemy. They actually do hold the goal of amassing as much power as possible, and fuck the actual job of governing. They want the country to do worse when their opponents are in charge of it, because fuck the country, they just want power. It's why they have to reject the liberal paradigm of people having differing views, and nonetheless not viewing each other as villains. and coming together to support the new leader after the votes have been tallied. That kind of respectable civil bipartisanship stands in the way of them amassing power, so they must reject it by alluding to this nebulous false idea that politics is actually just a staged drama played out in public to manufacture consent, and none of it's actually real. And to truly make a difference in politics, you must smash the Uniparty and smash the system. It's all fucking authoritarian cope bullshit, and you would do well to clear your brain of it. That's the real takeaway of the government shutdown. It's not necessarily about what policies manage to get passed or not passed, and it's not even really about the gamesmanship of making the Republicans look bad during a critical moment for the Democrats. The real takeaway here is the knowledge that every time the Republicans claim the Democrats are doing some dirty, underhanded trick, it's projection. They've already done it before, and their only motivation in bringing it up is to morally browbeat the Democrats into unilaterally disarming themselves, while the Republicans keep hypocritically employing the same strategy. Because the Republicans of 2025 are not a part of the Uniparty called America. They fight for a completely different team. Alright guys, that about does it for me. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to hear me yap about something else, head over to the side channel, where Naomi and I watched Wicked Part 2, otherwise known as Wicked for Good, and we talk about it for a while. I will see you over there, guys. Have a good one. I love you.